And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring.
Fox's alert on the effects of Hurricane Matthew with rising rivers, a major concern in North and South Carolina, where hundreds of dramatic rescues are underway as emergency crews ferry people trapped by the high water, and the flooding danger is.
We've been watching throughout the morning are water rescues performed by a team from Pennsylvania. They've been going out in small boats, metal boats or rafts, sometimes with oars, sometimes with motors, and pulling people out who are trapped in their houses or this apartment complex over here, 3 or 4 at a time. Many of the people visibly shaken, carrying some belongings or a pet, and really shaken up, saying they haven't had electricity or water in some time.
Through Bermuda with 120-mile-an-hour winds, and Jennifer, you were saying 90% of the country was without power.
Right, without power, but amazingly, no one injured or killed. If you were wondering what a Category 3 hurricane looks like, this is the vicious wind raking that island of Bermuda. So many stunning images.
Bermuda blasted. Furious winds in the hurricane reaching 120 miles per hour. As Category 3 Hurricane Nicole went barreling across the island, gusts were measured to 104 miles per hour.
Can't see much, everything's white out.
Officials warning people to take cover.
We need everyone inside.
But not everyone listened.
My family's insane.
Nicole is the second major hurricane in the Atlantic in just 2 weeks. Always impressive from space, you can see the eye. And inside that eye, this drone video taken as the winds briefly calmed. This morning, more than 16,000 people still without power.
The West Coast are bracing for the next punch from a powerful Pacific Ocean storm system. It's expected to bring heavy rain and dangerous high winds from Washington state to Northern California. Remnants of Typhoon Songda knocked down trees and power lines. About 50 people had to be rescued from an outdoor recreation camp in Port Angeles, Washington on Friday. The storm brought torrential rain to downtown Portland last night, turning streets into virtual rivers. It's also being blamed for unleashing 2 tornadoes, which, as our John Blackstone reports, has led to a very big cleanup.
Forecasters are warning that today's storm slamming the Pacific Northwest could be a monster. On Friday, as huge waves surged, heavy rain battered the Oregon coast.
Look right there.
Oh my gosh!
A tornado surprised residents of the beachfront community of Manzanita. It's been nearly 20 years since one touched down there. Many shared it on social media.
That transformer just blew. Dude, that's a straight up tornado.
Some businesses and homes were damaged in the small town, 90 miles west of Portland.
What's the weather forecast in space? Is there a weather forecast for space? Well, that's what President Obama wants scientists to keep tabs on. The president issued an executive order today trying to get the science community prepared for solar storms that could disrupt us here on Earth.
Solar storms happen all the time. Scientists say that they're like 1 million nuclear bombs exploding at the same time. Yes, they're that big. The problem is, no one knows exactly when the effects of one of those storms could strike the Earth.
The executive order signed by Obama states that this weather has the potential to result in cascading failures that would affect key services such as water supply, healthcare, and transportation.
And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines, and pestilences,
Unknown illness causes hallucinations in Oregon. An unknown illness appears to have spread from one woman to 4 other people in Oregon. including 2 deputies, causing them all to have hallucinations. The incident began at around 3 a.m. on Wednesday, when a 57-year-old caregiver reported someone vandalizing her car outside the home where she works in North Bend. A deputy responded to her report but found nothing. The caregiver called the police again several hours later. The deputies then suspected the woman might be having hallucinations caused by medical issues. She was taken to the hospital for examination, but medical personnel were unable to find anything unusual, so she was released. Shortly after she was released, the 2 deputies who handled the caregiver began having hallucinations and had to be hospitalized. The 78-year-old woman who was being cared for by the woman and a hospital employee also began exhibiting signs of hallucinations and had to be hospitalized. The Coos Bay Hazmat team has not yet found the source of the contamination, but they said the illness appears to be passing through human contact.
Therefore shall the land mourn, and everyone that dwelleth therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field and with the fowls of heaven, yea, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away.
Mystery in Baldwin County. What's killing birds at the mouth of Weeks Bay? State wildlife officials are investigating the deaths of more than a dozen seagulls, brown pelicans, and great blue herons.
Professional wildlife photographer Cynthia Donaski has been taking pictures of birds here for years.
We've never seen anything like this.
It's very unusual. I don't normally see that down here.
Locals that fish here are not sure what's happening.
It's more than I've ever seen in the parking lot down here, so it's unusual.
Pretty disturbing. Dozens of dead seagulls are found in a Portland park, and now wildlife officials are asking for help from the public.
It is an unusual request, but it's because 36 juvenile herring gulls have died there in recent weeks with no explanation.
Hundreds of dead fish are washing up on the shore in Guilford. People who live in the area are asking us to come check this out, figure out what is going on here.
Patrick, one lady told me she saw a catfish wash ashore dead this morning. Collier County officials say beaches from Marco Island to Wiggins Pass were all littered with fish carcasses.
We don't get stuff like this in Hollywood.
Even Naples residents like Joanne LeBaron were surprised to find hundreds of fish lying dead on the beach this morning.
I have never seen this many dead fish on the beach at all. So,
a pollutant in Dubuque and Jones County creeks has killed nearly 8,000 fish, but the Iowa Department of Natural Resources is still trying to figure out what that pollutant is.
For this cause, God gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another. Men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient.
For the first time ever, CoverGirl has introduced its first ever male ambassador.
That's right. CoverGirl describes him as a boundary breaker and says he'll be the first of more boundary breaking representatives.
The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth.
that America already is great, but we are great because we are good.
America's great. All right, so I want to ask you, what was it about Hillary Clinton's argument that resonated with you following Donald Trump's defense of the video?
She stated that America is already great, and I tend to agree with that. Though we are slow in progressing in a number of areas, we are progressing, and we need to continue the momentum.
America's great. All right, so I want to ask you, America's great. All right, so I want to ask you, America's great. All right, so I want to ask you, what was it about Hillary Clinton's argument that resonated with you following Donald Trump's defense of the video?
She stated that America is already great, and I
Right. Like I say, people don't realize certain neighborhoods in particular, they bust people around to vote.
They do what?
They bust them around. They put them in a bus and they move the poll site to the poll site.
Like what kind of neighborhoods?
Oh, I don't want to say.
Oh, like minority neighborhoods, like black neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods?
And Chinese too.
Oh. Why do they do that? Just to get like more votes for Democrats or?
Almost themselves. They're all running for office.
Oh yeah, for like their candidates for when they're
for the assembly, for whatever. They get buses and they move people around.
Well, New York doesn't have voter ID laws, right? New York?
Oh, you can't. You cannot ask.
They what?
They can't ask for a voter ID.
Why is that? They can't?
The law. The law says you can't ask somebody. Which they really should be able to do. You know, I don't think it's too much to ask somebody to show some kind of an ID.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, you have to show an ID for everything else.
Right, you go into a building, you got to show them your ID.
Well, you're the commissioner, you said, of the Democratic Election Commissioner. So if you think there's voter fraud and you think there should be voter ID, why don't people listen to you? I mean...
Well, that's because the New York State Legislature makes the laws. I don't make the laws.
And you think there's a lot of absentee ballot fraud, too?
Oh, there's thousands of absentee ballots. I know where they came from.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, Hillary Clinton doesn't support voter ID laws. Like,
I know. That's why I'm not always crazy about everything the Democrats do either. Blasio just gave out ID cards.
He what?
He gave out ID cards to Blasio. You don't have, you know, that's in lieu of a driver's license, that you can use it for anything. Well, they didn't vet the people to see who they really are. Anybody could go in there and say, I'm Joe Smith, I want an ID card. It's absurd. You're going to see a lot of fraud. Not just voter fraud, all kinds of fraud.
What a waste of taxpayer money.
That's why I'm getting more conservative as I get older.
Well, maybe you won't vote for Hillary. I don't know.
I would, but I have no choice.
Well, not only just like voter ID because of like voting twice, but like people can like cover their faces. You know what I'm saying? Like,
all the Muslims could do that too. You know who they are.
De Blasio wants to let them in New York.
He doesn't care. What does he care? Who's going to pay for it? You are. Your tax money.
The Muslims, yeah, especially like all those burqas. Like someone could claim, oh, it's my religion, but then you don't know if they're pretending or not.
Exactly. Your vote isn't really counted because they can go in there with a burqa on and you don't know if they're a voter.
You don't what?
Yes. Your vote gets discounted because they come in with a burqa on it and they can vote. People think, you know, it's a liberal thing to do, but I take my vote seriously. And I don't want 10 other people coming in negating my vote by voting for the other candidate when they're not even registered voters.
Are you sure you're a Democrat? Are you sure you're a Democrat?
I'm only telling you this.
ye shall hear of wars, and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet.
Iran has established a military presence off Yemen's coast just hours after Washington carried out its first direct strikes against Houthi forces. The U.S. fired Tomahawk missiles from a warship in the Red Sea. We can just see over to the west over here, while the Saudi-led coalition is bombing Houthi positions from the air. And here are some of their American-made military jets. Now, Tehran has now entered the fray and sent its warships to this volatile area right down here on the southern coast, reportedly to protect vessels from piracy. Now, the White House insists its airstrike was a defensive measure against a reported attempt by the Houthis to target a U.S. Navy destroyer. But the move threatens to take the conflict to a whole new level, as RT's Paula Sleer now reports.
The last thing the United States needs right now is a new war on its hands. But as things heat up in Yemen, it's possible that the center of international conflict could be shifting from Damascus to Sana'a and expanding dangerously from a regional to global scale.
In two separate incidents, missiles were fired at U.S. warships off the Yemeni coast. The Pentagon then authorized the hitting of 3 radar sites in rebel-controlled western Yemen in response, even though the Iran-supported Houthi rebels denied firing rockets. It's the first direct military strike by the U.S. in Yemen.
U.S. officials have reportedly told NBC News that the CIA is preparing for a possible cyber attack against Russia. The move would apparently be intended as retaliation for Russia's alleged interference in America's presidential election, a charge Russia denies and for which it says the U.S. still has no evidence. It said an attack would seek to, quote, harass and embarrass Russian authorities. And former U.S. diplomat Jim Jatras, however, thinks there might be other reasons for a cyber offensive against Moscow.
This is almost like a press release that the government is giving out as a warning shot or really a threat against the Russians. And even though they're saying this is connected to the election, there's no real evidence regarding the DNC and the other things on WikiLeaks, what the statement says is that it's geared toward interference with the election itself, with the voting. And anybody who's familiar with our system knows that that's next to impossible. We don't have a single nationwide voting system. We have 50 states, thousands of local state and county systems, most of which are paper, most of which are, even the electronic ones, not connected to the internet. So the idea that Russia or anybody else could hack into those is just absurd. So I don't think that's what this is really about. As we know, this whole Russia, Russia, Russia theme has been a constant of Hillary Clinton's campaign, and maybe the Obama administration is trying to help her out a bit by turning up the heat and pointing the finger. It's kind of a cyber saber rattle. It's almost they're daring themselves to do something just to show that they can, and it's become then a matter of prestige. It's almost like they're daring themselves to do something that may turn out to be quite destructive for everybody.
On Wednesday, an international group of researchers, engineers, lawyers, and entrepreneurs announced the creation of a nation in space. They named their nation Asgardia after the city of the skies ruled over by Odins in Norse mythology. Anyone can sign up the nation's website, and although Asgardia does not yet have any land, it is attracting citizens. Organizers say the idea behind the initiative is to create a new legal framework for the peaceful exploitation of space, free from the control of Earth-bound nations. The nation-building effort is led by a Russian space scientist and engineer, Igor Ashburly. In 2013, he founded the Aerospace International Research Center in Vienna, known mostly for publishing the space journal Rome.
This generation is uniquely placed to change the course of history. As Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon rightly pointed out, this is the first generation with the potential to end extreme poverty, and the last one able to act to avoid the worst effects of climate change. No community should be considered to be outside the span of this new agenda. Whatever your ethnicity, whatever your livelihood, whatever your lifestyle or location, all of you are inside the agenda. We need to inform everyone that these goals are the heart of a plan for the future of the world's people, as well as for the planet itself.
Thus he said, "The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces."
Peace and security, human rights and justice, and sustainable development brought together within this 2030 agenda.
For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape.
An explosion went off just moments ago at a military base outside of Chicago.
Peace and security. Professor, it says here that the chip could trace the purchases of excessive weaponry and stopping terrorist attacks before they start.
Do not get that chip.
He who testifies to these things says, yes, I am coming quickly. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. That means he can come back at any moment. He can come back right now.